Shalom Aleichem, everybody. It's Erev Shabbos, Parshas Tavo, and I wanted to share with you an idea on Inyana de Yoma. The Gemara in Maseches Pesachim and Tavo tells us that Shloshim Yom Kodem HaChag, Sholim V'Dorshim. Sholim V'Dorshim Hilchos HaPesach, 30 days before the Chag. You go ahead and you're supposed to go over the halachos of Chag HaPesach 30 days in advance of the Chag. There's a lot to learn, a lot of mitzvahs, a lot of potential averos, and therefore to study the halachos before. The Mishnah Berurah writes in the beginning of Hilchos Pesach that we're also supposed to do this for the other regalim before Yom Sukkot, before Shavuos, also to study the halachos of the regel before we get to the regel. A similar halacha you find in Maseches Megillah Daf Lamed Beis, where the Gemara tells us Moshe was metaken that Dorshim behilchos hachag bechag. We're supposed to study and hear shiurim about the halachos of the Chag on the Chag, by the regalim, by Pesach, Shavuos, and Sukkot. On the Yontiv itself, we go ahead and study Takanas Moshe Rabbeinu, to study the halachos of the regel on the regel. The Maharsha on the Gemara Masech Megillah is bothered by the following question. Why is it that Moshe was metaken this halacha by specifically the regalim, and you don't find this by Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur, that there's an Indian or an idea of shoalim or dorshim behilchos hachag bechag? It seems like this is meduik from the Gemara. It applies to the regalim and not necessarily by Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur. The Maharsha says something very, very striking. He tells us that when it comes to Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, what is the mitzvah? What is the itzumo shel yom? What's the day all about? It's a day of tshuva. And as a result, since that's the mitzvah, that would be the halacha that you'd be learning. But the mitzvah of tshuva, says the Maharsha, applies all year long. It applies 365 days a year. It's not uniquely a mitzvah that applies specifically to Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur. It's an everyday mitzvah. Therefore, there's no reason to go ahead and be shol v'doresh, the unique halacha of Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur. After all, this applies every single day. That's the chiddush of the Maharsha. But intuitively, we understand that during the days of Elul, during Rosh Hashanah, Aseres Tshuva, and Yom Kippur, true, there might be a mitzvah of tshuva all year long, but intuitively we understand that there's a fundamental difference between the mitzvah of tshuva that you find during these days and the mitzvah of tshuva that you find Sha'arei Yemos Hashanah. There seems to be a difference, and perhaps one could suggest is that the nature of the mitzvah of tshuva is very, very different during the Yemei Ratzon. What exactly is the difference? So, Rav Nebensohl suggests that when it comes to the mitzvah of tshuva, he gives a mashal when a person wants to go ahead and knock down a building. You want to go ahead and knock down a structure in order to rebuild it. There's two ways you can go ahead and do so. One way you can go ahead and knock down that building is go to the top floor, take a hammer, and start to chisel away and hammer away one by one at the bricks. And knock out a brick and another brick and another brick and another brick, and sure enough, you'll knock down your building. But there's another way to do it. And the other way to do it is to go take a big, big sledgehammer and go to the foundation. And take that massive sledgehammer at the foundation, give a splotch, give a smash, and by undoing the foundation, all of a sudden the entire building topples down. Says Rav Nebensohl, that's the difference between the tshuva of all year long and the tshuva of the Yemei Ratzon of Elul, Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur. All year long, we work on ourselves and we do a chet. We want to fix it. We want to do tshuva for the chet. We have a midah that we need to work on. We work on that particular midah. It's an avoda, using more modern terminology, from the outside in. When it comes to Elul and Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, it's a fundamentally different kind of avoda. Here, it's inside out. We're not just going outside in at the pratim, at this chet, at this midah, at this wrong behavior, but we're going to the root. And by going ahead and attacking the root, attacking the foundation, so everything falls into place in that fashion. On the one hand, it's much more difficult to go ahead and introspect and hit at the root. On the other hand, it's also easier because instead of dealing with 1,000 different details, if one focuses on the direction of his life, his value system, who he is and who he wants to be, and gets to his core, then all of a sudden everything can automatically and much simpler fall into place. This is what the Baalei Mussar writes, that when it comes to these days, we go from the inside out, and really we have the ability to remake ourselves as really a bona fide Bria Chadasha. It's a very, very stunning comment of the Rambam. This is found, we know that the Gemara The Mishnayos at the end of Maseches Yuma make an analogy between a mikvah and the tshuva process. We're told that Maha mikvah mitar es Yisrael kacha kodesh baruch hu mitaher. Maha mikvah mitar es hatmeim kacha kodesh baruch hu mitaher es Yisrael. The mikvah is mitar tmeim, so too Hashem is mitar Yisrael. When we submerge ourselves into the mikvah, that is mikvahs Hashem, we have the ability to achieve Tara. What's this analogy? Perhaps what's the linkage? Let's study for a moment a prat of Hilchos Mikvos. The Rambam writes in Hilchos Avos Hatuma Perek Vav Halacha Yud Zayin that what exactly achieves the tahara when going into a mikvah? Is it being submerged in the waters of the mikvah? Or perhaps no, it's the aliyah from the mikvah. When do we achieve tahara? When we're in the mikvah itself, or when we emerge from the mikvah? Now, I would have said prima facie that the tahara from mikvah is achieved when I'm enveloped in the waters of the mikvah. The waters of the mikvah give me the tahara, but it's meduyak from the language of the Rambam. Is what the Kesef Mishnah says in Mefurash. Others as well, the Or Sameach as well, that the tahara is not achieved while inside the mikvah, but rather when one emerges from the mikvah. That's, for example, a nafkamil halacha. Let's say a person goes into the mikvah, he's tamei, of course, and now inside the mikvah he touches taharos. So you might argue, what do you mean? Inside the mikvah he becomes tahar. And therefore, if he touches taharos, he's not metameh them, he is tahar. The Rambam says clearly it's not true. When he's inside the mikveh and he touches taharos, the taharos become tameh. Because when does he achieve his tahara? His tahara is achieved only when he leaves the mikveh, when he exits the mikveh. And so too, the taharos were now tameh while they're in the water. Only will they become tahar when they leave the mikveh. That's a tremendous chiddush, very counterintuitive. I would think the waters produce the tahara, not the exiting from the mikveh, but that's not how the process works. The Shem Mishmuel, in his drush on Rosh Hashanah, explains what's the logic of this idea. Why is it that it's the aliyah min ha-mikveh that produces tahara, not sitting in the mikveh itself? And he says the following yesod, is that when we go into a mikveh, so human beings cannot physically survive inside a mikveh. It's not a place where we can have our chayas. So when we go into the mikveh and become totally enveloped by the waters, we have no existence. We have no potential existence. In a certain sense, we're dome kames. And when we emerge from the mikveh, we emerge as a bria chadasha, as a brand new bria, as a new entity. That's the rebirth that the mikveh creates. Inside the mikveh, enveloped by the mikveh, it's as if we're not alive. When we go ahead and come out, we come out as a bria chadash, as a new person. So the Rambam writes Hilchos Tshuva, that the true sense of Tshuva is you emerge as a bria chadasha, hence the Shinoi Hashem, you change your name. This idea of mikveh is echoed as well in the Sefer HaChinuch Mitzvah Kuf Ayin Gimel. He wants to know over there, what's the idea of doing tovel in Mei Mikvah? So he says similar. When you're tovel in the mikvah and you're enveloped by waters, you're supposed to focus, and the theme is that it is if your world is like the world Kodem, the Bria. Before Bria Sa'olam, what did the world look like? The world was covered with water. That's what we're told in the beginning of Sefer Bereshis, V'ruach Elokim merachefes al pnei hamayim. The whole world is covered in water. And then the world is revealed, is created. That's what the creation process is. When you're in the mikvah, your world, if you will, is pre-creation. You're supposed to focus on that concept, and you emerge as a new entity, as a refreshed entity, as a recreated entity, as a bria chadasha. That's the inside out. You become ki'ilu, a new person. That doesn't happen by just working on the pratim, the outside, this point and that point. It comes from a radically different approach, an inside out approach, by looking at everything from a different perspective. That is how it is achieved. That's the process. No coincidence that Chazal tell us that Rosh Hashanah is Yom Haras Olam. It's the day of the creation of the world. And in a certain sense, these last 8-9 days of Elul are, if you will, the 8-9 days when we're about to emerge from the Ubar. We're about to be recreated. These are days where we're sitting in that mikvah. We're not yet fully living. We're going ahead and preparing ourselves for exiting into this world, for the creation of the world. That's the Bria Chadasha that the Aseres Mitzvah, Rosh Hashanah, and Yom Kippur represent. It doesn't happen, though, just by being tovel in mikvah. A person has to work on himself and has to go ahead and work on his value system. who he is, what life is all about, his relationship to Malchus Hashem. By thinking and focusing on those broad concepts, those broad ideas, he redirects his focus. He redirects his system of values. He redirects the core of his identity. And then all of a sudden, the issues of Talmud Torah every day, of being about chesed, of not being a ka'asan, of hitting minyanim and davening bekavana, all of those things start to fall into place because he indeed emerges as a Bria Chadasha. This is that unique avoda of these last days of Elul, as we go ahead and get ready to emerge dip into the mikvah that is Yom Kippur, and go ahead and emerge as Bria Chadasha. This is our challenge, this is our avoda. Not only work from the outside in, that's true of Kol Hashana, but work from the inside out. Have a wonderful Shabbos, and I hope that everyone's slichos this week are very, very meaningful.